In this Dragonfly Creative class, you're going to be mastering improvisational piecing. That's choosing shapes, colors, and design to create a composition based on your own ideas. We'll be covering piecing to create blocks, and then putting those together to create larger components. Next, we'll discuss how to put those pieces together to create a larger design. After that, I'll show you how to decide on cutting and piecing orders to make things easy, and then we'll throw in some spur-of-the-moment design changes. If you're ready to learn and get creative, I look forward to seeing you in class soon.
So what we're going to be doing today is just a real quick video on what to do with all those leftover mask scraps. Say that 5 times fast. We've all been making masks for the coronavirus effort, and one of the things that we've all got leftovers of is scraps, because I know that no one throws anything away. So what I'd like to do today is just do a quick little tutorial about how to go about taking those pieces and doing some improvisational piecing to add to a larger quilt. Okay, let's go. The first thing I'm going to do is dump out my scraps. So I've been making a few masks, and I just keep them all in a container. This one happens to be the kitty treats that they like the best. And I just keep all of those on my sewing table, and I just stuff them all in the bag. So one of the first things I'm going to do is see what kind of shapes I've got. I've got triangle shapes, which will go together nicely. I've also got long shapes, and some of them have selvages on them. That's okay, we can cut those off later. Then I also have sort of weird shapes from where the mask came out. We'll put those aside, and then we'll figure out what we want to do with maybe the big square pieces, or even some of the little teeny pieces. We're going to use just about everything. So let's start by just putting together some of the triangles. So I've got some triangle pieces here, and I think what I want to do is find a straight piece, and I'm just going to sew some of these triangles right onto the straight piece. So what we'll do is just put them right sides together, then line it up underneath your sewing machine. Now I'm going to stitch this at a traditional 1/4 inch, okay? And then we just go ahead and stitch this at a 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to do, so my needle stops down. And then I'm going to start just grabbing more fabric pieces. So I'm going to put this one in, and I may lift up my foot a little bit so I can line that up. And I'll just pop that in and put that in under 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to grab a green scrap, pop that in there. And just keep sewing. And so eventually what we're going to have is we're going to have a long piece with a whole bunch of scraps attached to it. So what happens if you have a piece like this? This was around the round corner of the mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my rotary cutter. I'm not going to use a ruler. That's for you type A people. I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm just going to take that rotary cutter and I'm going to cut that off to a reasonably straight edge, and then I'm just going to go ahead and continue putting these pieces onto the strip. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different things sewn together. I've got some half square triangles done from just the little triangle scraps done on the, cut off the corners of the masks. And then what I've done is I've joined them to a larger strip. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this strip down. I'm going to cut it down this way, so I have another strip here, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut the different triangles into pieces, okay? So I'm going to first cut the green down, and I'm just going to try and make a relatively straight line. Now none of this has to be super accurate. This is not about piecing itty bitty tiny points. So now we have this, okay? And next, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting these into little bite-sized pieces, okay? And then we will go ahead and add those onto something else. And now I've got another piece that I can sew to someone else, okay? So what I might want to do is if I want to sew if I want to sew this edge together, I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to trim off the edges so that those are even, so that then I can go ahead and line them up with the edge of my fabric, and then I will have a nice even seam to sew there. I'll talk about how to sew some curved seams later, but right now let's just stick with the straight seams. So what I'm going to do is just pop it under there, and I'm going to sew that straight seam, and then I'm going to keep going and just continue and add all of those pieces to this one piece of fabric. Now, because I've made masks out of a similar sort of color range of fabrics, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with a lot of similar pieces. So I'm not worried about stitching this and all of these onto one color fabric. We have enough different colors here that it's going to mix up in the end, and we don't need to worry about that total variation, okay? So I've got a bunch of stuff sewn together right now. I've got my long straight pieces. I've got a straight piece with some triangle pieces on there. Then I've got a couple of the curved pieces that I put together, and you'll notice that it looks like it's been stitched straight down. But what I've done is I've just stitched, and it's a little narrower up here, and a little narrower down here, and then it's fatter right here. So I've just let the sewing machine take this and stitch a straight line for me. I'll trim up that seam allowance later. But what this gives me is this gives me a way to use up these odd shaped pieces. Okay? Now, I'm just going to go ahead and keep combining the pieces. So this is that little half square triangle that I made, and then I stitched it onto a piece of green, then I stitched both of those onto a piece of blue. I'm going to trim these up, and then I'm going to go ahead and keep making pieces. And then these were some of the triangle pieces that I had, and I just stitched them all together. Okay? But I have this weird little wonky edge here, and I don't really want to cut all this off to make it a square because there's too much good fabric here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay this piece right along here, and that'll turn this piece into a square, because I don't mind getting rid of a little bit of this because I've got a whole bunch of it. So I'm just going to sew these together right along that edge. So see, I've matched up those straight edges, and now I'm going to go ahead and just stitch. Now you do have to go a little bit slower when you're doing these. You can't be the maniac speed demon, which is what I like to do, because you gotta help put the edges in line. So now what I've got is a weird piece like this, and you're gonna say, well, that didn't help at all. But what I'm gonna do now is take my wonderful rotary cutter. I can also take a lovely pair of scissors. By the way, we have these scissors available for sale. And what I can do is I can go ahead and cut this into a basic rectangle piece. And now I've got this, which is really cool. Okay? I love this piece. This will be fun to stick in to the overall quilt. And just so you guys get a little bit of a taste of what's coming up and what we're going to do next when we have all these little weird pieces together, we're going to decide what color we want to put on the background. I already did some of the choosing for us, but then you get to help me a little bit. Because we have so many greens, I decided to go with a sort of terracotta or a red, because that's very close to complementary colors. And terracotta and green looks good together, and so does terracotta and red. Purple and red is always a nice color combination, and we have a lot of those different colors in here. So I brought a whole bunch of different Kona cottons out here. And I'm thinking what we need to do is we need to take these out of the bag, and you just need to hold these up and see how they look, okay? I like that a lot. That looks good. But then we have a little bit darker color. This one's called paprika. Ooh, that's very rich looking. Okay? So either one of those work, but it depends on what you're going for. And then what I did is I took and I went off in a little bit different direction, and I got a very bright red this time, and this one is called Cardinal. These are all from Robert Kaufman in the Coman line. Now look at that. I think I like the Cardinal. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and take a lot of the pieces that we put together, and we're going to lay them on the background, and then I'm going to talk about how, one, we make decisions about where we put things and which things we use. And then we're going to talk about how we take the background and cut it up to get the exact same look that we have when we place the pieces on top of the fabric. Okay? Now some of these are going to be a little more spread out because this is all the space we have for right at the moment. But when I get those pieces cut out, I will show you how they ended up. Okay? So first what I have is the basic look right here. So I've got two long strips right here, and then I've got two of my little units, or three of my little units, that are actually going to be sort of end caps. Now, I wanted something in the middle here, so I tried a whole bunch of different pieces that we had put together. My initial piece that I tried was this one, which is like a little log cabin piece, and I really love this little piece. So I put that right here, and I sort of like that a lot. But then I started looking at the other pieces, and I realized this piece is very structured and very traditional. These pieces are very freeform, and they don't quite match. So while the positioning is good, the colors are wonderful, the actual style of it doesn't quite work for me. Okay? So what I did next was started taking other pieces that I had done. So here I did another sort of little triangle log cabin, and I put that down there, and I thought, no, too small. I feel like the three bears. And then I tried another piece here, and I thought that looks better to me because it's a little bit more freeform, one, but what I didn't like is the lack of color. This is pretty much medium tone in the same color range, okay? So I wanted to get something in here with a little more color. So then I took another piece that I had just made a whole great big strip of. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and take one of the parts of this and use that for the centerpiece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay them down right here on the center, and I'm just gonna look. Now, I like most of that, but for some reason I'm not crazy about the pink. It sort of blends in here. It's too close. So now I'm going to try and do this end. I'll just fold everything else up and under. I've got that down there. I really like that. And that's because it's got a lot of the freeform piecing that the rest of the pieces have in it. It's got verticals, it's got horizontals, and it's got diagonals, so it talks every which way. And the colors are mixed up enough. There's a purple, there's a bright green, there's a brown, and then there's even some of that sort of tealy color, okay? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to unpick right here. And then I'm going to lay that down. So when I get that done, we'll come back and continue talking.
Thank you for watching this Dragonfly Creative class. If you'd like to see more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.